Hello and welcome to the Voice Extra podcast. My name is Tayo and I'm here with voice contributor, second time guest, and contributor to the brand new book, The Woman Writer's Handbook.
Saskia, hi.
Hi, hello. So, obviously, we've already had you on before for Inside Voices, but
Yes.
today we're here to talk about something different, something that I think is very close to both of our hearts.
That's one way of
So,
putting it, yeah.
would you like to tell the people what we're here to talk about today?
Today, we are going to talk about the wonder that is Riverdale.
Yeah, that is what we're doing.
That is what we're
We
doing.
looked at the world, thought, it's all too serious. Let's give you some hot mess.
Yeah, people could use a bit of cheering up, like dissecting the mess that is Riverdale.
Yes. So, for any of you that have somehow been living under a rock, Riverdale is a TV show. That's a good start, I think.
Yeah, great start.
Which is like a show on the American network CW or on Netflix for us here in the UK,
Hmm.
and it covers this high school called Riverdale High and the people around it. It's kind of loosely based on the Archie comics, those classic comics, but obviously it diverges massively from it as we will get into it.
Yeah, in the
Saskia, what would you
loosest way
describe the
possible.
yeah. What would you describe the genre of the show to be?
Oh, is mess an option? The genre of Riverdale is, it depends on the day and the episode, but it's a
Hmm.
little bit of high school drama, a little bit of horror. They haven't gone down the sci-fi route yet, but I'm sure that one day they probably will.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
it's
kind of
definitely a mix of everything.
episode to episode, it kind of almost has the feel that they've kind of gone and thought, here are my rejected scripts. Let's just make this a script in Riverdale.
You're terrible. But accurate. That's very accurate. I think it's like if you were to sit down with one of the Riverdale writers, you can imagine them being like, "Oh, I don't like to be put in a box. I just go with, like where my heart tells me to go." And it's like, "No, you just don't know what you're doing, and it's okay. Like, it's okay."
So, like, a very broad, like, description that I wrote down for each season's, like, A plot. Then there's the B plot, the C plot, the D plot, the all the way through to, like, Greek letters plot. But season one is like a relatively straightforward murder mystery.
I agree.
Season one is like the most grounded, I would say.
Yeah, I completely agree. Season one, you don't feel like you're getting lost in anything yet. Like, there's a very straightforward road that they're traveling on, and it's the most, concise, I reckon.
And the most focus on Archie Andrews. The rest of the seasons are like, he's kind of
Yeah,
boring.
he just
We'll get
disappears
back
into
to
the
him.
background. It's like, yeah, you're hot, but like nobody cares about you anymore. So let's just give you like a really bad music career. Let's send you to jail and just, it's just, yeah, we're over Archie Andrews in season 3 and 4.
Yeah. So, season two, the A plot is about a serial killer called the Black
Ah,
Hood.
the Black Hood.
Season three is about a cult,
Mm.
um, and
Oh,
integrates a lot
Griffins
of
and
weird horror elements.
Gargoyles.
Yes, and also like a D&D parody called Griffins and Gargoyles,
Yeah.
that's linked to all of that. Season four is like another murder mystery, but this time it's kind of abandoned any idea of like a realism. It's very much gone into like Agatha Christie parody murder mystery type thing, is I think the vibe. And then
Yeah.
through all of that, there's subplots about like gang wars and like a kind of thing about gentrification in the prison industrial complex, but kind of not. We'll get into it. Don't worry about it. And there's just lots of other stuff in between. So yeah, that is, I would say, the overview. Have I missed anything?
I think in season 4, if you were to break each storyline up, they would be shows in different eras. Like
Go on.
the whole Stonewall prep thing, the whole murder mystery is very like Agatha Christie's Marple, and then everything that's going on with like Archie, it's just a bit ridiculous in
Oh
season
yeah,
4.
they do a
It is
whole
my
like
least favorite season.
Yeah, they do a whole like Dead Poet Society thing.
Ugh,
In
yeah.
season 4. Yeah, as you probably guessed, this show is very messy. So I would say that the only way to really understand it, to really get it, is to watch every episode. But that's just me. Other
I
people
would
might say
agree.
don't never watch the show, but
I mean, those people are missing out on some pretty fun stuff in between. I mean, and some very cringy moments that you wouldn't believe unless you saw it,
yeah.
and
I
that's
think
always fun.
the great thing about this show is that whether you love it or hate it or whatever, there's always something engaging going on screen. No matter how bad it is, it's always engaging. Like you've got Cheryl, who's like the head mean girl at the school, and every few episodes she comes in with a new outfit. It's always iconic. It's always slow motion to music. It's just there's always something, I would say.
There is. Cheryl's outfits are amazing, and the hair. I'm so glad that there hasn't been an episode where she, emerges from some tragic gothic horror and she, ends up being blonde or
Oh
brunette. Like,
no,
I'm so glad they haven't got rid of that because they
no,
do
she has to keep
sometimes.
that hair.
She has to be ginger, absolutely. But
I mean,
Cheryl
they.
is problematic.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. She is.
Mm.
Is she maybe the most problematic character that isn't consciously problematic?
Probably, I think because of her pizzazz and just general like outward appearance, people forget how problematic her actual life and character really is.
Yeah, like because they do a lot of weird stuff with her specifically,
Hmm.
and I think there's one thing about this show in general is that characters will just change from episode to episode, from season to season, and you'll be like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
So Cheryl is one of those characters. Um, Marisol, Hermione Lodge, who is the mother of Veronica Lodge and kind of the mob wife of the show.
Yes.
Her character is maybe the most inconsistent in the show.
I'd also say the most disappointing as well. Because if you remember oh god, I don't know what season it was, but when Archie is like in the woods with Veronica and Jughead and Betty and they're at that
Season
cabin,
2, I think.
season two, and the driver, Hiram's driver, drives him out into the middle of nowhere, and then he thinks he's going to meet Hiram, and then it ends up being Hermione, and it kind of was steering towards her being the mastermind
Yeah,
behind everything, and I was really looking forward to that, and then it just kind of didn't ever happen.
yeah. I think in that show they keep doing a thing where they're like, "Oh, Hermione might be the mastermind. Hermione might be like this," but because
Mm,
Marisol Nichols is quite good, and like
yeah,
you keep getting the impression, oh, she's gonna like usurp him or she's gonna do something, but then they go back to, but she's still like his wife and loyal, and it's weird
exactly.
in a show that is so like all like the female characters in the show have massive amounts of agency. They basically do what they want. They're mostly more interesting than the male characters. For a
Yeah.
show that is so like interested in that, it's so weird that Hermione Lodge just constantly ends up being the wife.
Yeah, especially like, I mean, she did try to kill him, remember? She had him shot. And all of a sudden now he's got MS or whatever it is that's wrong with him. It's like, and he's got this random daughter. What the hell was that about?
Oh yeah, I think
Ma- Whatever her name is.
who could say? Um, I mean me if I looked up, but I no. Look, this is more of an experience than a individual factual thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You don't need to know their names. I mean, you've only been watching it since season one. It's absolutely fine. But no,
yeah,
they do completely just. She has so much potential, and but and now that they're doing this whole like the way that it's gone, and I don't think there's going to be many more seasons after this. I just don't think we're ever going to get to see like the true Hermione Lodge.
yeah. It's a shame, but actually that does bring me onto a thing. Where they talk about Hiram's like weird MS that I don't think they ever explicitly call MS, which is that
Mm.
the show does a thing where they will never call anything by its actual name.
Oh God, here we
So
go.
yeah, I have, I thought I'd have to just collect a few examples for you wonderful people to get an idea of this.
Go
So,
for it.
actually, Saskia, you'll remember. So I'll give you the name and you'll tell them what the actual thing is meant to be. They'll
Okay.
probably guess, but okay.
Okay.
Let's start with the one which is maybe the repeated the most. Jingle Jangle.
I'm. That's probably like ecstasy or MDMA, right?
Yeah, it. I think they change what the drug does from episode to episode. To
Yeah,
be
because there was
honest.
Fizzle Rocks as well.
Yeah, there's Fizzle Rocks. Yeah, because it's like at some points they did that it's just like a casual party drug. At other points it's like a massive hallucinogen, and you're like, what's going on?
Told you, they just wake up and they just follow their heart.
So we've got American Excess.
Ugh, American Express.
Yeah. Uh, TGI Thursdays.
Maybe TGI Fridays.
Grind'em.
Grinder.
And then we've got this technically isn't a name for something in the real world, but we'll go with it. We've got the Ghoulies. Do you want to explain who the Ghoulies are?
Okay, so the Ghoulies is the rival gang of the Serpents, and they are just off their head on drugs, kind of hillbilly. I don't want to say, they're that kind of vibe of gang, and they don't really have any direction, and they just love to cause havoc.
Yeah, and it's just like because this this is what we're talking about with the weird gang warfare thing. The show does try and do a little bit of a like class commentary thing, with like the north
Hmm.
side being where Riverdale is and where all these like middle class whatever students are, and the south side being all rough and having gangs. But
Yeah.
it's very weirdly done.
I think it's because they don't focus on it long enough to mean anything.
Yeah.
They'll mention it briefly when it's got something to do with Jughead coming into his own, or FP like get out of the trailer park and emerging into the north side like a butterfly. Like it doesn't. They don't focus on it long enough for it to really make a point.
And like
So mm,
yeah, I think not to like throw shade at Ryan Murphy, but this whole show has a in parts has a very Ryan Murphy feel to it. Like in terms of we're moving from one exciting thing to the next exciting thing to the next exciting thing to the next exciting thing. You've got all these young hot actors doing these quick exciting things and
yeah.
doesn't really like hold in on anything.
Yeah, you see, like I've never really been a fan of the stuff that Ryan Murphy does. Like I really don't like American Horror Story. That was nonsense to me. So I hope that they can kind of try and regain some control over. I mean, I think we've gone past that point. I think I'm
Yeah,
just wishful thinking over here, but you know,
a little bit.
who knows what season five will bring?
Yeah, it could they could just be like, oh, we're a serious show now, guys.
Yeah, and people would just accept it
Yeah,
because we've just kind of taken whatever it is that they throw at us. Oh, we're doing like a murder mystery, and now these four kids like have gone from jail to drug problems to homelessness, and we're just like, yeah, cool,
yeah.
And then we're supposed to believe that they're going to sit down and study for their exams. Like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And then they kind of address that with Archie, but no, with none of the rest of them.
Oh my god, yeah. Archie went through a lot, and then
Archie is just oof, Archie.
he's oof.
So, how would you describe Archie's journey to our wonderful audience?
Oh, I he started out as the kind of guy that you really want to succeed. He was like boy next door to bad boy with a little bit of an edge to just like wet blanket. Like now that he's not having all of these, these slanging matches with Hiram, and
Yeah,
he's not really into Veronica anymore, and all of that stuff. He's just like there's not really much to him.
I think the thing that the show in the first season, the show like heavily focuses on Archie. Like they try to use him as a perspective character. Basically,
Hmm.
after like halfway through the first season, but into the second season in particular, they basically abandon using him as a perspective character. Because I think one of the things about this show is that you can very much tell it is very responsive to what fans think. And like
Hmm.
it is a thing in terms of people who talk about Riverdale that Archie is the worst character. And Archie just makes the most ridiculous decisions. And like, especially as you move on in the show, they kind of become more and more. You can tell they're more self-aware of that, and
Mm.
more just like canonically, just like, yes, we know Archie is the worst.
See, but I never used to find him so terrible. I think now that if they're responding to what fans think, it's almost like they don't want to give him any storyline in case
Yeah,
fans have an issue with that.
I think
But
so.
when he was, like in prison and trying to rally up, like he was that ray of light for all of
Hmm.
those inmates. And he really was like a hope for them.
Yeah,
And he was, with his little red circle and injustice and all of this. But now it's just like, oh, okay.
I think part of the thing is that he's only interesting when he's given an interesting premise, because I think that's what
Yeah.
they kind of realized in season one, was that he cannot. Archie is played by KJ Appa, by the way. Uh, that
Hmm.
he cannot carry the show on his own, and
Yeah.
um, he has to be
Bless.
given something interesting to do. Otherwise, it is just dull.
Really dull. Because he's too good. And for Riverdale, like, that's out of character and you don't belong there. Like, he's too much of a good guy. And like how they say the good guy never gets the girl kind of thing?
Yeah.
It's one of those. I mean, he does get the girl, but, but it's just one of those things. I mean, I've always been Team Jughead anyway,
Yeah.
so I've never really been bothered what Archie does.
Yeah.
And if he's good in an episode, it's a bonus.
Hmm. And I think
Yeah.
they justify how he gets the girl by every episode having him being shirtless. I think every
Yeah.
episode? Pretty much every episode.
Almost every episode.
Like, they'll start a scene with him with his shirt off, and you'll be like, where was the. Okay, sure, this is happening.
Just go with it. Why not? I definitely preferred Archie when Luke Perry, who played Archie's dad, was in it.
Yeah.
He just seemed like he had more to fight for, and he seemed like he cared more.
Hmm. I think so. Yeah, it's obviously like Luke Perry's past, and it's like such a you can you can like feel almost like he was one of the emotional cores of the show, and you can very much feel when he's gone, and it's just yeah, it's weird. It's
Yeah,
a
I
lot.
really didn't think that we were going to notice it so much because, he wasn't in every single
Hmm.
episode. But when a side character dies, like either in the show or in real life, you're thinking, it's not really going to make much difference. But I really feel this one. Like, Archie needs an anchor.
Yeah, like Archie's whole thing, especially the thing you've been invested in, is Archie and his dad, Archie and his dad, Archie and his dad, Archie and his dad. And when the dad's not
Yeah.
there, he feels almost like listless.
Yeah. Because if you think about the whole reason he turned into like this bad boy anyway was because his dad got shot.
Yeah, it's like it's. I mean, that's probably something they'll figure out with season five more concretely. But yeah, it's just rough in
Yeah.
both real life terms and in the show as well.
Yeah. Maybe
Uh,
if they championed his indigenous background, he'd be more interesting.
Maybe I don't
Who
know.
knows?
Um,
We'll never find out. So
Speaking of dads, actually, this brought me to another thing that the show, I think it was in season three, they acknowledged in a very weird way. um, where this is one of the things where the show is very like wink wink to the audience, is where it refers to, sometimes it uses names for things that the fans have used. So like Saskia talks about Bughead before for Betty and Jughead, um,
yeah,
as their ship name, and one of the things they also did was the Hot Dads of Riverdale.
yes, they
Because
did, didn't they?
yes, they did reference it in the show, because basically Riverdale fans made jokes about how every dad in that show is hot, and so
They
the
really
show was
are
like,
though. Like they are very good-looking guys.
it is like weird, such a weird energy, and then they're very aware of it and play with that, especially with what's his, especially with Skeet Ulrich and with,
Yes.
where's the other guy? Oh, and
Kevin
Martin
Keller's
Cummings, who
dad.
plays Tom Keller. Yeah,
Yeah, Tom Keller. When they did that whole oh, I can't remember who they were fighting for, but they were, defending their kids,
yeah,
and the camera just kind of like slowly as they turned around and were kind of like, like it was, it was
yeah. It
very
was
much
very,
playing into that fan, hot dads of Riverdale kind of thing.
yeah. I think the thing that works about the like weird objectification in the show is basically everyone gets it. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
it's true. That's, I mean, normally it's all about, like the girls. I mean, you get guys as well, but you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
this time it's like there's no age boundary, it seems.
yeah. It's like
It's
anyone can get that camera
anyone
on
and
them
everyone. Yeah,
because
it's
like
true.
it happens with female characters because for example where you've got like there was a whole like I don't remember what season a whole pole dancing scene and stuff and like
Oh, Lord.
when they're like going to places at night in these weird like latex black cat suits.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, and but also then you get Archie, Tom Keller, basically any male in the show just being shirtless for no reason, and you're like, okay, this is happening, I guess.
Yeah. Especially like, I don't know. It's one of the things that I kind of like about the show. How everybody
Yeah.
does get their moment in the spotlight
Mm-hmm.
in that way.
Or
But yeah, it certainly does
like
make it interesting.
Hiram gets it. What's the actor? Mark Consuelos gets it a lot, especially when they had the scene
Yes,
with
a
him
lot.
wrestling Archie Andrews, and I was like,
Oh, that was cringy. I'm sorry,
and
but
they
that was
played it up
really
so
uncomfortable to
much.
sit through.
Yeah, there
Never
are
again.
points where they definitely push it, and you're like, okay, guys, can we are we
Can
done?
we stop now? Like, are we done? Okay. Yeah, no, that seems definitely too much. The whole rivalry between Hiram and Archie, anyway. Hiram is a grown man. He's been to prison. He's a mafia boss,
Yeah,
but you're in competition with a 17-year-old child.
and he's literally like no, 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 in front of your whole school, I'll fight you. Like what?
Like, if that was real life, you'd be arrested. Like, he's really not worth it.
Yeah, also
It
because he
doesn't make
just
any sense.
it's the thing. Characters kind of turn up in places sometimes, especially in the school, where you're like, these are like whole adults, just turning up in the school as if it's not a school.
Yeah, like it's a shopping center or something. Like, what are you doing here? First of all, like, why are you not at work? And how are you able to just walk in? Especially, in the latest season when Mr. Honey takes the prom away from them because
Yeah,
they did that Heathers musical. Out of nowhere, all of the mums just like
they just rock
stroll
up.
on into the school and have a full-on confrontation with the head teacher. Like, what?
You're like, why? What? Why are you here? Why are you just allowed to be here?
And the funniest thing about that scene as well is that sometimes you forget that these lot are actually teenagers. They've buried dead people. They've,
Yeah,
taken drugs and having sex. But at the end of the day, they had to call on their parents to get
yeah.
prom. It was something so like amazing about that. I did love it. That was really like, you know,
All the characters who are meant to be like 18 are all at least like
mm,
24.
yeah. I told you it's a throwback to the 80s. That's what they're doing.
Yes, it very much has that vibe.
Mm.
And it's
They
great.
could
It's
they'll be
glorious.
50 and pretending to be 21.
And speaking of like throwbacks, I think it would be wrong not to mention the way that this entire show is just like all the references. Like everything in the show is a reference or a parody or a spoof or something, and it's so clearly not current references. Like you have to go with me here. It is very much like the kind of references. It is the references of a like basically it's a reference point that like a gay man who grew up in the 90s knows. Like it's a very specific kind of reference because it's like it's
Yeah, when
Heathers.
their
It's
audience,
yeah.
it is, no, you're so right, because their audience is quite a generic group of people, but the Heathers and, even, okay, Carrie is something that everybody knows,
Yeah.
but they don't go for what 17-year-old these days has seen Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah. It's like no.
It's like, who are you doing? Who is that for?
I think it's
That's
just
what it
for
is. Who is that
themselves.
for?
It's literally for themselves because I'm like because also like you can tell they're film nerds, but like a specific type of film nerd because there's not really references to like what you would consider to be like the big stuff. It's very most of it is like very niche nerdy stuff, and I appreciate that. I think it's more
Hmm.
fun that they reference niche nerdy weird stuff but
Yeah.
it's like such a specific frame of reference, and you're like, wow. It's
It's
just
almost like the person writing it is an advocate for these niche, kind of weird, obscure movies, and he or she doesn't want them to die.
yeah,
So he's like, I'm just gonna devote this whole 21st century show to shows from just like a different era.
yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. And you know what? As we were saying, Carrie, the executive producer and creator, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, is
Hmm.
literally wrote the Carrie remake. Like,
Oh God,
the 2013 Carrie remake, which I forgot existed. Like,
with Chloe Grace Moretz.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and it wasn't good.
Yeah, so this makes it tracks basically.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, those movies, they're great and stuff, but there's a time and a place, and I don't think Riverdale is the time or the place for bringing them into the light.
I think every episode title is also. I think there was a full season, or maybe most of the show. Every episode is a TV show or film reference, like every episode, something like that.
I actually couldn't name one episode title of Riverdale,
Because they are all very specific references, and you're like, why? Also, I think the problem
literally.
is,
I
go on.
don't pay attention. I
Yeah,
just click play next. Like, I think there's one called Griffins and Gargoyles.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure. And I think there's one called the Sweetwater River.
yeah. Everything
And
very
that's
much
it.
blurs in this show. Like details, everything. I think I once
Yeah.
wrote a thing about how this is like the perfect postmodern show because basically everything is connected to everything and it all blurs together, and you're just like, wow.
Sit there in a haze
Yeah, it's just
afterwards, like, what did
it's
I
like
just watch?
a feeling rather than an actual set of events.
I think that's a really good way to put it. Because when you're watching it, you just feel so kind of like, like there's nothing else going on except for what's going on the
Yeah,
screen. And then you turn it off and you're like, oh wow, like, like what just happened
but you're still there every week, or
every week.
or at least, or you, like me, you fall behind and end up binging about 10 episodes in a row. But
But sometimes that's best because I think there comes a point in every season where it kind of, and you know how American TV shows take a break.
yeah,
I think it's when you come back from that break and there'll be like one episode that's good and the next one I always feel like it's slightly falling off the edge.
yeah.
So if you miss a couple episodes around there and then you come back and then you don't have to wait for the next one, it's actually more interesting.
I think that's a general problem with American TV though, because they have to have this like 23 episodes a season. You end up having dud episodes every time. Whereas like sometimes at least in British TV they're just like, as much as annoying that you wait like 3 years between each season, you're like, you know what? I will have my 6 good episodes and that's just it. Rather than American TV is like, no, everything must fit into must do 23. Doesn't matter how short your concept is, it must be 23 episodes, and you're like,
But I miss the days like the first season of Riverdale was only like 12 or
yes, that
13
was
and I remember
yeah,
when season 2 came in and it was 22 now. I Oh my god, it just dragged. And I started to when I rewatched it again, it was like, wait, I can't believe that this happened that early on. Like I really thought it was I just kind of lost my way when they started doing that.
I think yeah, this show there's no real way to keep track, and I think
What did you say?
as I said, there's no real way to keep track of like what's going on. To be honest,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's one last thing we should probably get to before the end is that
Hmm.
this show isn't all perfect. Like as much as we talk about how it like feels just it's like weirdly cathartic and like silly and fun, there are a few weird, less great areas. Saskia, I don't know if you want to start with one.
I think we made it sound less than perfect. I don't think we made it sound perfect at all,
Mm.
to be
Or
honest.
let me
But
rephrase
yeah,
that. What I mean is it's less that we made it sound perfect, even though I would make that argument. You can come debate me on that, but um, there are what I actually mean to say is there are a few more problematic elements of the show that we should probably address before
Yeah,
we finish. Is actually what the more point I was trying to make. So I'm sure Saskia, if you hit me
yeah.
with one.
I will go with the way that they represent black people in the show because it's, something that's very close to my heart. Um, the bottom line is that you can count on one hand how many recurring black actors Riverdale has, and two of them, well, have left. There's actually been quite a few, in and out. At the beginning, you had oh my god, what was his name? The pervert, the one who used to he
Chuck.
did the sticky maple.
Chuck.
Chuck. See, I knew you would know. You've got people like Chuck, who's a jock and a bit of a creep, and then he turns into a born again Christian. And you've got Josie and her pussycats, who are the entertainment, shall we say. They
Yeah.
just, it's not the worst representation of black people I've ever seen, but that's partly because there's not enough of them to even build a strong enough picture. And it's just too basic. There's no depth. The
Mm-hmm.
one that annoys me the most is Tony.
Oh, go on.
She Yeah, she plays. So Tony is played by Vanessa Morgan, and she is Cheryl Blossom's girlfriend. When Tony first came in, she was a serpent. She was a photographer. She just had so much to her. Like, she's bisexual as well, so you've got the LGBTQ plus like representation as well. Like, she had so much to her, and then all of a sudden she gets with Cheryl Blossom, and her whole identity is just like stripped away.
Yeah. Vanessa Morgan actually talked about this recently because it came out that
Mm,
she was basically paid less than every other recurring character, and
mm-hmm.
and she's obviously not written that well, and it's annoying because
Not
Vanessa
at all.
Morgan is like great. You're like, yes, let's go, Tony, let's do this, and then she kind
Yeah.
of is Cheryl's accessory.
All of a sudden, she's the token girlfriend. Like, she looks good on the arm, but God forbid we give her any line longer than, oh, babe.
Yeah,
That's all she kind of says now. She
yeah.
has her new girl gang, the Pretty Poisons, and I don't know what happened to them. They kind of just fell off the deep end.
This is the thing with like in Riverdale, black women tend to just they just cease to exist at a
Disappear.
certain point. Like Josie and the Pussycats. Josie left to do another show, like another show with the CW, but the other two Pussycats kind of just vanished.
Yeah, it's like if Josie's not here, then none of you are here. And Haley Law, the one who played Archie's ex girlfriend, I've also forgot her name again. Oh my god, Viv, Viv,
Yeah, Viv.
was it
Yeah,
Vivian? Viv. She had an amazing voice, like singing, like she was just
she
really
just had a
cool, and
cool
they just
vibe as
didn't.
well.
Yeah, she had a really cool vibe. I love the way she dressed and stuff. But if she's not going out with Archie and if Josie's not around, then she doesn't exist.
Yeah,
And Tony as well, she, even the whole, Cheryl gave her opportunity to attend that private girls university, the one that Cheryl was going
yeah,
to. She didn't even get considered. It was just like, oh yeah, Cheryl's got you an interview, so now you're gonna be successful because of Cheryl.
yeah,
And it is just a very tired, played out kind of narrative that I just
yeah.
really expected more from.
And then yeah, and then to like quickly sum up as well the black male characters, like of the three, one is a physically and emotionally distant dad, another is essentially a sexual predator, and the third is a
Yeah.
prize fighter who is basically the slave of a prison warden. Like this is not great in general.
Oh my god, I actually didn't even think about Josie's dad. Typical, like, he's a blues singer and he's absent, and that's it.
He's the only like proper adult black male in that entire. That's apart from Pops, who is a magical Negro, to be honest, in that entire show.
Oh lord,
like,
yeah.
like if I'm complete, like I love him. I love Pops. I love the
Yeah,
actor. He's such a. You see, he gives very nice old man vibes, but he is essentially a
yeah,
magical Negro.
yeah. He's definitely reminiscent of like the house slaves
Yeah.
back in the day, ugh,
Especially
yeah,
when like
he's
his shop gets bought out, so it's not even his own thing. It's just he's kind of just chilling there.
yeah, now he just runs it. He went from family business owner to now I'm just a patsy for the criminal goings on of the Lodge family. Like, come on now.
Yeah, it could definitely do better. And then if we even move on to different types of representation, like Veronica Lodge and the entire Lodge family, it's not
Ooh.
great. um,
It's especially America has such a strong, kind of like Latin, Spanish, and like
yeah,
black population, and the way that they're represented. As Veronica knows one word, she'll throw it. She's Latina when she wants to, when they want her to
yeah,
be, when she's having her, rum business, or when it's they have that awkward family meeting around the
yeah,
table, and they're like, But other than that, she's she's just not.
yeah. Because they do a really weird thing when she's talking to her parents, where they can't decide how much Spanish she actually knows. Like, any like for example, my parents will sometimes speak Yoruba to me, sometimes speak English to me. A lot of other people with like immigrant experiences will know, oh, a parent speaks like two languages to them. What
Hmm.
Veronica's parents do is that they'll say something entirely in English, then throw in a random word in Spanish, and you're like, what?
Mija Merdemosa. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the sister's name, Merdemosa.
Yes.
There you go. I have a terrible Spanish accent, but it's fine because so does Veronica,
Yes.
so it's okay.
Because you're just like, it's just like, oh yeah, they're Latin when it's convenient. Like, as you said, like
Yeah,
it's a bit, yeah,
and if we think about as well the Native American kind of representation on the show, the serpents, Sweet Pea and Fangs, are Native American, right?
it's the show is very ambiguous about it. It's it says that the serpents kind of originated from a Native American like group, but it's
Hmm.
very unclear as to how many people involved in the gang are actually Native American or if they've just kind of been involved in the gang.
I mean, I'm just thinking back to when, the episode about Pickings Day, where
Yeah, yeah,
Tony brought her granddad to Jughead, all of that
yeah.
stuff. They all seemed really passionate about removing this statue. Oh, how relevant is that now?
Very
Um,
relevant.
very relevant. Um, so yeah, I just kind of assumed that maybe they're all Native American, but even the fact that they haven't set that in stone is an issue
Yeah, it's what this.
as
I
well.
think the main or not what no, yeah. I think in terms of stuff like this, one of the big problems with the show is that it it picks and chooses when it wants to decide ethnic minorities are a thing, and is often very
Hmm.
very vague about it in a way that feels like they're trying to be kind of progressive, but they don't actually want to dedicate an episode to it. So they're just kind of like, yeah, marginalized group, they exist.
Exactly, but in that respect, doesn't it kind of reflect like society now anyway
Yeah,
as well? I mean, they could be geniuses and be like, "Oh, we're just holding up a mirror to make you guys, aware of your own lack of knowledge and your ignorance." They could be really, but I don't think they're that
yeah,
smart
I wouldn't give them
to
that much
do
credit.
that. Yeah, no, maybe not.
Another weird thing about the show is, as much as we joke about it being like very free about like sexual liberation, stuff like that, it has a very weird relationship with sex work in particular, and with just like moralism around sexuality. Because sometimes it's like, oh
Okay.
yeah, it's just these kids and they're doing whatever and whoever and whatever, and it's just fun. But then sometimes it decides to be really strict about its sexual morality, and you're like, why?
Wait, give me an example.
Because the show is like, oh, here's a bunch of kids who have like covered up for murders, um, are all going and having underage. I don't. It's the ages are unclear in this show. Either
Very unclear.
underage or just reaching the age of consent, whatever in this show. And but then it's also like, oh yeah, but Veronica's mum, who is a sex worker sometimes is the most despicable person on earth because of the sex work she does, as if everyone else isn't like murderers and stuff. And it's like, what is going on with this show? You know what I mean? Like, it has a weird, inconsistent morality that it sometimes decides is
The moral
going to
compass
be.
of Riverdale.
Yeah, I just don't. You get what I mean, right? It's like very
Honestly, it's so shaky.
inconsistent because it literally was.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
if you notice how, no, I was just gonna say like how you're so right because they'll all judge each other as well, even though they've done worse things.
yeah.
Like Betty especially, she is has no room to judge anybody. I think she's probably the worst character. And every time someone does the smallest thing, she's like, "Oh my god, V." Like really? It's like, come on, you killed your cat when you were like 10. She killed Muffin. Like, come on.
And you know what's so
Ah,
great about
they.
this? No matter what spoilers we
Mm.
say, it won't make any sense to you, so you have to watch the show to understand them.
Exactly. I mean, she didn't just randomly wake up one day and kill her cat, or did she?
Ooh,
Who knows? Oh, add a bit of intrigue there.
yeah.
There is one thing I want to ask you
Go
though.
on.
What do you think about the LGBTQ representation on the show?
I. Mm, mm. This is a very good question. It's it's so weird because on the one hand, you're like, oh yes, they have Cheryl and Tony, this like uh lesbian couple. Tony's bisexual,
Mhm.
but them being together, a lesbian couple, and you're like,
Mhm.
yes, they're at the center of the show. They're not treated in this weird fetishistic way lesbian couples often are, and they're just kind of chilling
Mhm.
and vibing and having a good time. And you're like, that's great. But then you've got Kevin Keller, who, no matter how much the show tries to pretend otherwise, is gay best friend.
Oh, I could not agree with you more. I think the reason Cheryl and Tony kind of get that little extra bit of sauce is because they're also an interracial couple.
Yeah.
But you know,
I know
they're
what you
like,
mean.
oh yeah, we killed two birds with one stone. Like, look at us, we're so progressive. And then you've got Kevin, who is the best friend to the girl next door, or you know, and then he's what do they call it? When they go in when he goes in the woods and hooks up with random guys.
Cruising.
Cruising. Like you're just painting him in the worst kind
Yeah,
of generic light.
yeah. Kevin is literally just like, it's so weirdly outdated. And it's kind the show
Yeah,
like tries to pretend like say it's self aware because it is self aware about him being the gay best friend character, but never does anything about it. And you're like,
it
mm,
really is outdated. I mean, the only thing that I think is quite nice is that his dad is quite a man's man, but he has no problem with him being gay at all.
yeah,
So I think that's quite a nice touch. But otherwise, he is just so badly written. And then the one time he does come out of his shell, it's in drag.
yeah, and it's like,
Like,
could you write a more just generically gay character? And then there's other characters who are like canonically like not straight, but it doesn't really come into them at all. Like they're just like there, but they kind of off screen most of the time, and you're like, okay, great.
like fangs.
Fangs, who is a plot device at this point. Yeah, I don't know. I thought the serpents were some of the coolest part of the show, but it's just yeah,
I completely agree with you. At the beginning, they were, you, and then even when you found out that they weren't all bad, it's like, oh, I still really like you.
yeah.
And then, I guess they have too many characters and not enough.
Time.
Maybe they should make the show longer. Who knows?
Are we asking for more episodes of Riverdale?
Not episodes, but length. It's only 40 minutes, isn't it? So it would be good maybe if it was like an hour and then we could start to see some better characters develop because I am so bored of Betty.
Oh my god, they've done everything with Betty, and they won't let
Everything.
her just chill for a bit.
Do you think her brother Charles is a psycho?
I couldn't say this. I don't think the writers know.
They never addressed when he was listening in on Betty and Jughead's phone conversation and smiling to himself. Why have you tapped your sister's phone if you're just there to help? They
Yeah,
never addressed it again.
I honestly think from week to week they sometimes just throw out things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See how that lands. Mm.
hmm And so,
Well, I hope
go
we've
on.
given people some things to consider.
Yes. But what's our last verdict on Riverdale?
Watch it.
Yes. Yeah, I
After
agree.
all that,
Totally
watch
agree.
it
We'll
still.
watch it. We'll watch it with you if you want. I don't know.
Exactly. We should do like a Instagram live or something of us watching Riverdale.
Netflix party of Riverdale. Whoop whoop. Let's go.
Exactly. And I say watch it because even though some of the issues that we've like touched on are a little bit problematic, like none of them are so glaringly in your face for too long that it stops being an escape.
Yeah. And they're not. The thing is, nothing is like exceptionally problematic. It's just problematic in that very typical TV way, which I can't speak for you, but which I'm very used to kind of ignoring.
Yeah, kind of like it's not going to get better than this. So take the rough with the smooth.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like there's any like outwardly racist or homophobic stuff going on. It's just more outdated, played out narratives, I'd say.
Yeah.
So
And
still
yeah.
watch it.
So watch it. And say if someone wanted to like find you online and maybe talk to you about Riverdale, where would they find you?
They can find me at Sincerely Saskia on Instagram, Sincerely Sas on Twitter, or you can reach out to me on my blog, which is sincerelysaskia.com.
And say they wanted to see maybe some of your writing, something recent maybe, where would they find you?
Well, if you, as Terry said at the beginning, I am one of the contributing writers for a new book, the Women Writers Handbook, and that is available on aurorametro.com to buy. I have put it up on my highlights on my Instagram. So yeah, it's very easy to find and it's a really good read.
Yeah.
And if you want to read any of my other stuff, like just articles and what have you, sincerelysaskia.com and of course Voice Mag.
And I'm just saying, you should definitely get that book. Aside from Saskia, she is alongside very cool people who are just slightly inferior, like Carol Ann Duffy. There's just a
Yeah.
whole a whole murderer's row of great writers in there. That you should
Yeah,
definitely go
you've
read
got
that.
some Jackie K, Kit the Wall, like Claire Tomlin. There's a lot of really great
Yeah.
women who I was fortunate enough to be writing alongside of. So
So once you've like read Saskia's part, blurted on Twitter about it for 3 hours, then read it again, done a bit more, then you can go back and you can read the rest of these great writers in there. Just yeah.
yeah. There's some great artwork in there as well. So if anyone's into illustration and design, there's some really good artwork
Yeah,
in
it's
there
great.
too.
You can find me on Instagram at Tayo Writes, on Twitter at NigerPrince21. If you're Nigerian, you'll get it. If you're not, it's in the show notes. You can find everything Voice does at VoiceMag or www.voicemag.uk, at VoiceMag UK on Instagram and Twitter, and you can find the contributor stuff at voice.extra on Instagram. Please go rate, review, share, all the things. All the things people say you to do at the end of a podcast and then you never end up doing because it's busy or your time is short. Do it for us, you get more great content like this. And I think more people
Yeah.
deserve to hear very sizable rambles about trashy TV. So, thank you for
And
listening.
if they're lucky,
Yeah,
we might do something on 90 Day Fiance next time.
exactly. There's a possibility. There's a treat for you. So, Thank you for so much for listening, and we will see you on the site or somewhere later. Bye bye. Thanks to Kevin McLeod for letting us use Shaving Mirror. You can find his stuff on incompetech.com.